having been in the legal profession and also separately owning many businesses, I find employment of staff is probably the area I was most involved with having lawyers' involvement. And that is because there are so many regulations between the federal and state governments, as well as the issues of unions that really require legal assistance because they're very specialized fields. I realize sometimes people just refer to the HR department if you're a large enough company, but even the HR department, Human Resources, really should be thinking about legal setting some of the procedures, or reviewing the procedures, and also advice on handling a lot of situations. For example, it's very easy to get in trouble during an interview with a potential employee by asking the wrong questions. And quite honestly, lawyers can give you exactly what to say in an interview. In fact, one of the lawyers I know has come up with a template. These are the questions you ask. Don't ask anything more, don't ask anything less. Realize also there are organizations who send people around looking to see if people are discriminating against either race, color, or creed, whatever. And they go in with very good references and good backgrounds on their resume. If they don't get chosen, they're going to bring a lawsuit. And not necessarily, even with the false references and background, they may not be the best, but they feel that they're the best. And that, again, is a reason why you should think very seriously before you get involved with avoiding lawyers in this area. It is expensive, but again, it's a lot cheaper than getting involved in a lawsuit. And let's get started with it. It's hard to imagine a financial planner being successful without any employees due to the complexity and diversity of the profession. Today, if nothing else, you need a financial planner to be able to handle the day in and day out entry level gathering of data and researching for you. In addition, many firms today are hiring a full-time marketing person to do marketing for you. And you might also find the need to add someone to do taxes, so that you can provide a full business service for your clients. And as a consequence, that little one-person firm very quickly becomes multiple persons just to meet the needs. And another thing that we forget about is that computers and software need attention, and therefore we need people who are IT related to be able to help us with our computers and our software, etc. Remember that corporate status means owners who work for the firm are also employees of the firm. So when we talk about an employees of a corporation, that includes the president. It does not include the board of directors, but many times board of directors and advisory councils for companies get some of the benefits of the corporation. For example, they can be in the retirement plans, they can get many of the fringe benefits. They also can bring actions against the company, just like anyone else can who is an employee. And we'll cover some of the major laws for employment. Then we'll cover some supervisory guidance, followed by related ethics issues. And so it's not really much different the process than we use in the course. Before hiring employees, first thing you need is a federal employee identification number. And those are issued by the IRS. It used to take weeks to get it. Today you put it in and the next day you have it. This is a number that identifies you for purposes of having employees. It's also used for taxes and identify your entity, be it a partnership, sole proprietorship, limited liability company, corporation. It doesn't matter. You still should have an employee identification number. Now, some of you are saying, well, I'm a sole proprietorship. I use it when I'm a sole proprietorship because it separates in my records that which is business related versus what is personal related, even though they go on the same tax return. Obtain and post the employee notices from the Department of Labor, state and local governments. The Small Business Administration can assist in this. They have some of the posters. Also, the state departments will give it to you. Here in California, we have the state Department of Labor, who has posters also for you. And these are notices that must be on the board. And believe it or not, if you don't have the right and up-to-date postings on the board, you can be fined by the government agencies. And there are people going around to make sure the information's on the board, such as minimum wages and related type areas. And then you should always have job descriptions written up, including the level of authority. And that gets back to that subject of general versus special agents. How much authority you're giving the people, and what can they do with it, and what's in the job description. And many times you can save yourself a lot of grief later on by having a well-described job description. And as an employee's job changes, that job description should change with it. And it's normal in a financial planning firm, especially when it's growing and going into new client areas, etc., to have differences in the job descriptions, and those should always be kept updated. I can't emphasize that enough. That also reduces a lot of claims by employees later on, and if you have a dispute with an employee, you can go right to the job description, which they should be working to. If your job description is obsolete, quite candidly, you're going to lose to the employee in a dispute. Determined employees are to be interns, or hired through an agency. Agency employees are good for avoiding numerous problems. I think a lot of firms today hire their hourly employees, or what we call non-exempt employees, through an agency. And that also, if you have a retirement plan, puts the burden of the retirement plan on the agency rather than on your company. So let's say I have 5 professionals, and we all want to have a nice retirement plan, and we have 4 or 5 non-exempt people, clerical type. Those can be hired from an agency. We don't have to worry about any HR problems. We don't have to worry about having them in our retirement plan. We don't have to worry about the Social Security tax. We pay a fee to the agency. And I think more and more companies are doing that, especially small companies, because we do away with so many of that labor relation problems that tie up a lot of your time, and many times it result in lawsuits. There's more than once I've known people who made a living out of getting a job and then finding a way to sue the employer. In fact, probably the most stupid event I've had is during the middle of a work day, a woman left her office that she's supposed to be at, crossed a major street in the middle of the street to go to the bank, got hit by a car, and when she sued the company for workman's comp, and she also sued them for negligence, I believe, letting her outside the building, she got quite a bit of money. Now, had she been a worker in a temporary an agency that provided you with workers, that would have been their problem. The company I was working for wouldn't have even been involved in it. But we wound up spending almost a year between the employment courts and the civil courts trying to settle with her on the amount of money she was getting. And it turned out, after it was all done, a private eye we hired, because the company was kind of suspect of what she was doing, found out we were the 3rd or 4th employer she did that at. So there are employees who do it. Sort of like the person who goes into a restaurant and finds something in their salad or a chip glass. They're doing it to get a little money out of the companies, and they do make a living out of it, I guess. Have an attorney advise the current employment rules for your location and business type. Again, rules are different for your location and business type. When I say location, different cities, different states, different attitudes towards unions, different and different types of businesses having different requirements. One of the things I'm always concerned about is the OSHA laws, Occupational Health and Safety Act, because there's a federal set of rules and there's a state set of rules, and they're not always consistent. And again, I have my lawyer work with that, and so that I'm not in a position of caught in the middle between OSHA California and OSHA U.S. government. And the lawyers are good at that. That's what their expertise is, and most of the time they're going to get you out of the problem. Um, and finally, have your professionals review your job descriptions and a design list of questions you may ask interviews. Both of that, I think professionals do a good job of. Again, many times the attorneys can do that, HR attorneys. And if you have an attorney, he may have an associate attorney he works with that can give you a good review of job descriptions so they're complete. And though you want to see what a good job description looks like, go to a government agency and see if you can take a look at their job descriptions. Sometimes they even post on the internet in some states, because that'll give you an idea. Governments are excellent at writing a job description, including what training you need, background, what you can do and not do, etc. And that's be nice if you did it for your company, because it'd save you a lot of problems in the future. Plus, the employee knows exactly what they're expected. I've had jobs where I wasn't really sure what I was supposed to do, and therefore, when I had businesses, I always tried to be as clear as possible to my employees as exactly what I expected of them, because I didn't want them to have to go what I went through, where you kind of wander to figure out, okay, I'm creating a job, really. Interviewing. Document reasons for the candidate you will be interviewing. It is advisable to have professionals or your attorney review this documentation, and that includes types of questions you're asked. And only ask the questions that are approved by that list that you got from your expert or attorney. Limit comment on responses to understood or please clarify. Don't editorialize. There's people who, again, are in the profession of suing on interviews and for not getting hired, and you don't want to get in one of those situations. So, yeah, I understand. Please clarify if you don't understand what they're talking about, and don't deviate from your set of questions. And I found that the same set of questions really complied, in many cases, to exempt and non-exempt employees. So if I'm hiring an administrative assistant or a financial planner, it doesn't matter. The things I can ask are so limited that I stick with it. After session, document your factual conclusions. And again, if you're in a case which is like Southern California, where there are a lot of lawsuits against employers and potential employers, I would get professional review of my documentation of what I wrote up. It's sort of like doctors today and CPAs who, after meetings with clients, have somebody look over their write-up of their meeting with the clients to make sure they've got all the right words in there and not have anything that could hurt them before they publish it. Make decisions on ranking against the original criteria, and don't deviate from that criteria. If you deviate from the criteria, you're asking for a lawsuit. And again, I emphasize that usually what you originally wanted for the job is best. Don't be persuaded by what somebody said in an interview to go away from that, because you may not be getting what you expected. And I've gone through that, quite honestly, myself. First day, very important to have a planned first day that's consistent with the job description. And I several times, and this was in aerospace, what I was told in my job description and in my interview, the very first day I started, I did something different. And I still think of that at times. There was really no real job description, and you kind of create your own job within the constraints of the organization. So I think that having the first day emphasis on the job description, maybe going over with the new employee the job description that you have for them, see if they have any questions, and if they have questions, try to answer it the best as possible. Also cover anything such as benefits, including the salary they're receiving, going over when they get paid, etc. And we mentioned job description reviewed. Location of government required employment postings, show them where those are. Don't be shy on that. In fact, that's probably one of the smartest things to do, is show them right offhand. This is what the federal government and the state government and sometimes local government have for employment, so you can see any questions on it. And advise employees on company practice on mentoring omnibus persons, processing employee questions or concerns. I think even a small company with 5 or 6 full-time employees, and if you have not for the professionals, but for the non-exempt employees, you should have some type of mentoring or omnibus source that they can go to within the company when they have concerns. They shouldn't have to go to the president of the company. Sometimes that person might be an employee, and a company I'm on the board of directors with, husband owns a business, his wife is a part-time employee, I guess. I'm not sure she's even paid, but she's there, and she serves sort of as a feedback for employees who have questions and they don't want to go, and probably even shouldn't go from a political standpoint, to the president of the company. And she handles those things for the company. It works out great. And of course, as the company gets bigger, they'll probably have to have a full-time person in HR who handles those questions and behavior. Let's now look at some behavior discriminations, harassment, being PC and employee conflicts. Realize these topics are continuously changing due to laws and public opinion. And when I'm giving this right now, we're going through a situation where politicians and people in Hollywood are getting caught in sex scandals, and things that happened 30 years ago are all of a sudden coming up and haunting them. So you never know what's going to happen. First of all, training should be provided on all of the above that we discussed on the first day of the job, on the job description, and who they're, how to do it, and who they go to if they have questions. And again, it'd be nice if there's an omnibus or some person other than the boss the person can go to with their questions. You can also use sources of training from the Small Business Administration that has training courses for new employees and welcome new employees on board. And you get that from the Small Business Administration. There's also HR videos available through employment agencies that talk about, again, what you can do and can't do and how you do it. And always verify that they're current. A few years ago, I got one from a friend of mine who has an employment agency, a smaller employment agency that specializes in engineers. And quite honest, his material was out of date when he gave it to me. The only reason I knew it was out of date is I had just attended a conference on the topic of employment. And then finally have employees sign acknowledgement of seeing the videos and that their questions were answered. And if their questions weren't answered, make sure they get answers and make sure that's all included in a personnel file. Again, every employee should have a personnel file. Realize the employee has the right to see everything in the file, so make sure all management who gets involved in writing material that goes in the file is aware that the employee gets to see it. That's good practice to do. I know sometimes employers put some dumb comments in a file and wind up getting sued because it was discriminatory, or they made something like, she dresses beautiful every day with those tight pants. I mean, and when the woman found that out, she had a nice lawsuit. Things shouldn't be in the files if they're like that. Employee complaints. Employee complaints should be taken serious. Now, again, for those of you who are a little bit older and worked in the 1970s and 80s, early 80s, employees really didn't seem to have a lot of rights. Today it's changed drastically, and I think it has to do with the people entering the workforce are very independent. And the youth is changing a lot of what we're doing in employment practices. Complaint process should be in every employee job description or posted on employee bulletin boards as to what they do. The suggestion box of the old days, which was usually where you put your gum wrappers or ashes of your cigarettes, is today replaced by people writing letters to the bosses or to a lawyer talking about how they're mistreated at work or not treated fairly. And we should try and minimize that by having information so that we give them a process that they follow if they're unhappy. With that unhappiness being, and if you have that process in place that they follow, and they go outside that process, you're protected. So again, that process is usually going to come from a company that specializes in HR problems, or from your attorney. Again, attorney is usually a good source, and say, okay, this is your appeal process. If you don't agree with something, an employee has to follow that process as long as it's reasonable. Let's face it, your attorney gives it to you, it's probably been tested many times in the court system. The company should also have periodic review to make sure the job description and bulletin boards reflect the latest laws and regulations, and also, I'm going to say, also reflect what the employee is really doing, because there always seems to be changes in businesses over a period of time. What was a good job description a couple of years ago for a person is no longer reflective, and we ought to keep them up to date. In fact, one of the things that I've seen at a couple of companies that I consult with is they each year have, at the end of the year, the employee takes a look at their job description and recommends changes. And whenever possible, they try to incorporate what the changes are, unless it's against the company's policies for some reason. Say, hey, we don't really want you to do that. And the next chart we're going to talk about is our ethics in employment. Ethics training is very important. It should be done annually for all employees. In fact, if you work in contracting with the federal government, it's a legal requirement that you do training each year. It's a good idea for any company to do it, because ethics has become so important today, and especially with the CFP board. If we look at all of those things that were covered in early part of this course, that covered the CFP standards of ethics and standard of conduct and the appeal process, etc. Your people really have to be aware of that if they are CFP professionals. In addition, if they're CPAs or enrolled agents, they may also have similar type ethics requirements they have to fill. Again, these should be covered in the annual training for your people, and you must record who attended the meetings and keep it available for audit. And topics for trainings should come from professionals or from your attorney. And I would say that many times the organizations you belong to give you a good list of topics to cover in the ethics. If they don't, your attorney certainly can. Next thing I want to talk about is the compliance officers. Even smaller companies today have a compliance officer, and with 4 or 5 people, I think you even have to have it. Now, they may not be an employee, they may be an advisor or an attorney. And my last business I was very small, and so I had an outside advisor who was my compliance officer. Compliance officer basically ensures you're complying with the laws of the state, the federal government, and local laws. And it's pointed out here, they're also responsible for whistleblowing by your employees. If an employee has a whistleblowing and announces to the government or of some sort, state or federal, that something not correct, and the government gets back to the company, they get back to the compliance officer. So the way I look at it is the compliance officer is protecting you from all of those laws and regulations that the state and government and federal government pose. And you should take advantage of that situation of having this person. Again, sometimes a compliance officer works for 5, 6 different organizations. Once you get to a certain level, you need them really full time. Whistleblowing is an employee reporting a violation of laws or company rules that's done. I was a compliance officer in the aerospace industry, and I was surprised at the large number of anonymous phone calls we would get from people about things going on, and in probably 95% of the cases, it was obvious they didn't understand the business or how things were done. In fact, the most humorous one I had is somebody sent in on a phone call and said he had put in his estimate, something like $800,000 for a piece of equipment, and that was not included in the estimate, and he thought the company was buying in. Well, as soon as I heard the word $800,000, I knew this was not going to be something you charge the federal government. It had to be capitalized. But at the same time, I was required to go through the process with the government of reviewing that item and why it was being capitalized rather than expensed, and therefore why it wasn't included in the proposal. And it was, I think anybody who had any accounting experience or had been in the financial side of the business I was in knew exactly what happened. It's just people are very naive. Another one I thought was very humorous is a person said, I earn $18 an hour and the customer is being charged $40 an hour for me. Well, he forgot there's overhead, he forgot there's G&A, he forgot there's profit. Again, people tend not to understand how the system operates. Now, I think in a smaller practice, financial planning firm, people can become aware of all of that, and I think that's one of the things I like about small firms is even the administrative assistants are familiar with what the rules are and how you're billing and etc. And that takes care of a lot of the problems. And my final comment is client's office should document complaints and contact applicable departments, in appropriate cases the company lawyer for resolution. And in some cases you may have to contact the government or the CFP board is another one you may have to contact. Next topic is unions. Never talk to a union without legal advice beforehand. It's a good answer. Anytime you get correspondence from a union, you should forward it to your attorney for advice on how to handle it. You have to realize that Department of Labor for the federal government and Department of Labor's in the states are all very pro-union. It is not pro-management, and they're setting up many times rules and regulations that makes it very challenging for a company to comply in their discussions with the union, and you have to be very careful how you word it, and therefore your attorney should be doing the thinking for you in these matters. When you try doing it on your own, you're going to get yourself in trouble. The company management should be aware that the company is best protected from unions by limiting discussion to the attorney, or as a minimum having an attorney at the meeting where management is discussing union activity. I would say that any person who's a supervisor should be aware of this, and the supervisory level is probably the one that gets you in the most trouble, because that's the level you usually hear people saying about why you shouldn't join a union, the employees. And you got to be very careful what you say to the union, to the employees. In fact, you got to be careful what you say internally if it's documented. And I've had attorneys say, after looking at notes of meetings, say, can I get a red pen, I want to change this. And by the time he's done, it looked like there was blood on the paper that he had made so many changes to what was said in the meeting. Again, it's for your protection. Independent contractors, included or not limited to consultants, cannot be treated as employees. And if you're treated as employees, you're going to get yourself in a lot of financial problems with the IRS, as maybe also with the state. So I would just be sure that we always separate independent contractors from non-independent contractors. Now, I know small firms in financial planning love to call the financial planning practitioners as being independent agents. And if they have an enrolled agent there to help them with the taxes, they call them an agent. You have to really look at the job descriptions they have and how they relate to you. If you're controlling what time they come into work and you're controlling what they do, they are an employee. You can call them anything you want to, but they're an employee, and you got to take the employee taxes out. And so we want them to use their own tools, including their own computers, their own schedules, their own work plan. In other words, you give them an end task that you want to accomplish, they do it. For example, you will handle all of our tax returns. We will give you the returns when you're done with them. Filling them out, the returns for our clients, you give it to us, and we will sign it, or you will sign it. And that's about the only direction you can give them in the areas. You can't tell them that you want them back in 48 hours, or that they're to use your computers, or that you can operate in your offices. It's best if they work independently. If they're going to work in your office, they bring their own computers, their own software. In fact, they'd probably bring their own printer. Isn't a bad idea. if you want to keep us independent contractors rather than employees. I think in most cases I've come to the conclusion over many years that it's best just to make employees rather than independent contractors. The only advantage of an independent contractor is if I want to let them loose, it's very easy to break the contract. Where if it's an employee, it's much more challenging, especially today when the employees are always right and the employer is always wrong. Ethics we can't get away from, and let's emphasize this on independent contractors and consultants. There should always be a non-disclosure agreement signed between the independent contractors and consultants within the company. In fact, I've even proposed that in many cases a non-disclosure agreement be signed with all your employees. Never take the documents of one client to the office of another, and that is also true for financial planners. I have a client I received must be 10 years ago when I was still practicing, where they came to me. They said, my former financial planner did a great job for me. He got me a good insurance policy. He got me a good investment portfolio, and he had a retirement plan set up for me. However, I got a notice one day from another person that said, "Dear Harry, I got this left in my office." And it was a financial planner, left data from one client in another client's office, or home rather. It was a home it was at. And so I've always had a rule for people that work with me as well as myself: keep the documents in the files at work. If you're in the car, keep them in the trunk, and only pull out the file for that particular client. Don't put two of them in the briefcase you take to a meeting, and if it's on CDs, have a separate CD for each client, or same way with USB cards, keep a separate one for each client. Maybe a little bit more clumsy and having to work with it, but it's going to keep it confidential. Which brings us to confidentiality. Keep confidential proprietary data on memory sticks and not on the laptop or other devices taken to the clients. Remember, they are obligated to perform per the agreement. Deviations must be bilaterally signed and documented. And I think that should be very basic. You don't deviate from what your agreements are without making a change to the agreement in writing. And too often we don't, and then after a while what we do is quite a bit different than what we planned on. And finally, we must never refer to themselves as an agent or employee of the client. They are a consultant, and that's another thing that we should remember. So these rules apply to independent contractors and consultants if they're applicable. Again, I think in most cases they're really employees that we call consultants so that we can save taxes and save insurance, etc. And I'm not sure that's ethical, which is another ethics question. Conclusion, the risks associated with various types of financing a business were discussed. We also had the tax implications of various types of financing, and the fact that, again, interest is deductible and a capital investment is not going to be deductible, which is very important for people to realize. Most small businesses don't. Basic rules for hiring and managing employees is very important, especially in today's environment where we do have a lot of problems in this area. What makes one an independent contractor certainly is important, and the ethics associated with all of the above. So we have quite a bit covered up areas that you probably didn't think you'd have a lawyer involved with, and that's changed.